From badlands.substack.com, the CIA is being thrown under the bus. A deep state transfer of power is underway. By Erik Carlson. Let me start this article off on the wrong foot by offending some people. In my opinion, the John Lennon song Imagine is one of the most annoying songs ever written. It's pretentious and childish at the same time. It's basically saying, imagine if we lived in a sinless and godless world. He's trying to convince people that a godless communist society is a utopian society where everyone's needs are provided for, there is no crime, no corruption, and everyone is an equal. As we know, communism never leads to this end state. The song was even written after 50 years of experiencing how communism doesn't work. How about if Lenin just wrote, imagine a world without the CIA? An alternative universe where the CIA never existed is at least interesting to try to picture in your mind. How would the world be different? Before we get started, let me say I'm not naive enough to believe the CIA was created by the U.S. government to have an intelligence agency that would focus on maintaining and protecting the American way of life, maintaining and protecting American freedoms. I'm not gullible enough to believe that the CIA just lost its way. In other words, that what was intended for good became corrupted. Nor do I believe there is likely anything within the CIA that is worth saving, in my opinion. It probably makes sense to blow it up and start over with clear parameters put in place that wouldn't allow its replacement intelligence agency to operate within the U.S. against U.S. citizens or go on the offensive, overthrowing foreign governments. The new intelligence agency would have checks and balances. In truth, I believe the CIA was created by the British cabal to be used as a tool by these elites. The British cabal first created MI6, the UK's super spy agency, in 1909, as well as think tanks like Tavistock and other influential organizations along the way. The British cabal went from ruling the world through their military for centuries to controlling the world through their spy agencies and think tanks from the shadows. Ask yourself, why did the British Empire just go away without really being defeated? The answer is they moved into the shadows. We've all heard the expression shadow government, after all. MI6 created the OSS, the precursor to the CIA in 1942, shortly after the U.S. entered World War II. MI6 created the OSS to control the U.S. during the war. In 1947, the OSS morphed into the CIA, still fully controlled by the British elites. The CIA has been used ever since to enforce the cabal's agenda. For anyone who thinks the CIA just lost their way over time, understand that the CIA was used to establish the State of Israel. A year after the CIA was created, they were used to overthrow the Iranian government in 1953 and started the MK-Ultra mind control program the very same year. In other words, they were never created to protect American liberties. They were never designed to be a force for good. Remember the famous JFK quote about the CIA after the Bay of Pigs debacle in 1961. I will splinter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind. Less than a decade and a half after its creation, JFK viewed the CIA as an institution that couldn't be saved, that it must be destroyed. This sounds harsh. He viewed the CIA as not having enough redeeming qualities even to try to fix it. No part of the foundation or structure could be saved. A total teardown was necessary. I don't even think it's controversial anymore to say the CIA was heavily involved in the assassination of JFK. In my opinion, there were 4 presidents who were very concerned about the CIA's unchecked power: JFK, Nixon, Reagan, and of course, Trump. JFK was killed. Nixon was set up by the CIA and forced out of office. Reagan was shot. And Trump had everything thrown at him but the kitchen sink. Maybe that's why Elon Musk carried a sink into the office on his first day of work at Twitter. He knew what was in store for him, and the past 2 years have shown me he was right. On the subject of the deep state throwing everything at Elon Musk but the kitchen sink, an arson fire recently broke out near the Tesla plant in Germany. The Tesla plant was evacuated and production was halted. Tesla's stock dropped considerably, literally everything and anything to put the hurt on Musk the past 2 years. Who had an arson fire near a Tesla plant on their bingo card of what the deep state would pull next? I assume if the CIA never existed, the cabal elites would still have some control over the US. How it would look, I'm not exactly sure, but America probably wouldn't be the world's bully. America would be perceived differently by the world. Following World War II, America might have gone back to being isolationists, staying out of other people's business and other people's wars, more like how they were between the American Civil War and World War I, a time in America when industry and expansion within its borders exploded. Between the American Civil War and World War I, the British cabal lost some control over the US, which they didn't get back until British intelligence agents Colonel House groomed an unknown named Woodrow Wilson into the presidency of the United States. The formation of the Federal Reserve and the entering of America into World War I and World War II all happened before the OSS and CIA were created. America was brought into each by the British cabal and their intelligence agency, MI6, and London think tanks. But if the CIA wasn't formed immediately after World War II ended, if the OSS had dissolved after World War II, who knows how far the US would have drifted from their UK handlers' control. Maybe things would have been considerably different. We'll never know, because the cabal quickly created the CIA after World War II and changed directions. They now controlled the world through a Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. When you control both sides of every conflict, your odds of maintaining success and control go way up. If the CIA was never formed and the OSS disbanded after World War II, the economic boom of the 1950s in America would likely not have hit the roadblock it hit in the 1960s and 1970s. American creativity and ingenuity are strong forces. We saw what happened in between the American Civil War and World War I, when America was minding its own business and focused on itself and its internal expansion. Instead, we had the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and who knows how many unofficial wars fought by and because of the CIA. The military-industrial complex would never have achieved its power and influence without the CIA. I doubt the Cold War would have gained traction. The Middle East would not be the hotbed of terrorism and unrest it is today. Children of the 1950s through the 1980s wouldn't have lived in fear of a nuclear war. The CIA has been involved in every aspect of America and its culture. Everything would look different. Division between races, religions, sexes, sexual preferences, conservatives versus liberals, abortion versus pro-life, family structure. Literally everything that divides us has been manipulated by the CIA. The CIA has been involved in the feminist movement, legalizing and normalizing abortions, the destruction of the traditional family, the civil rights movement, the trafficking of people and drugs, the creation of cults and serial killers, as well as the manipulation of major religions. The CIA has been instrumental in the creation and distribution of pornography, the trans movement, and climate change. They control everything we eat, drink, breathe, see, hear, or think. No aspect of our culture has gone untouched by the CIA. The 1960s American counterculture movement is probably one of the CIA's most crowning achievements. A drug-induced free love, long-haired, smelly, jobless counterculture of America, created to make any dissenting views on the war machine look insane. If one spoke up against the Vietnam War, one was considered one of the counterculturalists, the cartoon-like characters the CIA created. If the CIA had never gotten off the ground in 1947, or if JFK had been successful in splintering it into 1,000 pieces, America would look a lot different today. Religion would likely still have a place in public schools and society. The traditional family would be more prevalent. LGB probably wouldn't have a T, because T likely wouldn't exist. Wars wouldn't have been fought. Soldiers would not have been killed. Drugs and human trafficking certainly wouldn't be at the levels they are today. More whistleblowers would be alive. More foreign countries and economies would remain untouched. If not for the CIA, Hollywood would look a lot different. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities, and scientists might not be controlled through blackmail. The fear of nuclear war and climate change might not exist. Inner cities would look a lot different. America would be a lot more unified. Jimmy Kimmel certainly wouldn't be hosting the Oscars. This may sound a lot like John Lennon's song. An unrealistic idea, but I can't help but think that this may someday be a reality. It feels as if the CIA is in the process of being thrown under the bus, being abandoned, becoming a scapegoat of the cabal elite. While ending the CIA won't destroy the cabal, it removes the most powerful and often used tool from their toolbox. It's like a carpenter without a hammer or saw, or a mechanic without wrenches or ratchets. Without the CIA, the cabal will still scheme and conspire, but they won't have the ability to put these conspiracies into action the way they have for the past 70+ years. Why do I think the CIA is being thrown under the bus? Since Trump took office, a spotlight has been shown on the CIA like never before. This spotlight has not dimmed since Biden stole the election. If anything, the illumination has intensified. Exposure of the CIA went into high gear when it was reported they were involved in the destruction of the Nord Stream Russian pipeline. Interestingly, Sweden just joined NATO, who recently halted their investigation into the pipeline explosion. The Swedish authorities, who have previously said that they suspect an unknown state actor of responsibility, said that they are halting the probe after verifying that the case does not fall under its jurisdiction. Is it a coincidence that immediately after halting their investigation, Sweden joined NATO? Is NATO going to be the cabal's new preferred mechanism of world control, replacing the CIA? By the way, the CIA controls Wikipedia. I just asked my phone, Siri, if Sweden joined NATO, and my iPhone said, according to Wikipedia, Sweden decided not to join NATO. Weird, to say the least. Is there a power struggle happening? In my last article, The Mystery of Julian Assange, I pointed out how often the CIA has been talked about in the news cycle the past few weeks. Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, who accused the CIA of all the things we know the CIA does, including things like blowing up underwater pipelines, color revolutions, and assassinations. Putin even mentioned that Tucker tried to join the CIA as a younger man. Shortly after the interview, Putin's political opponent mysteriously died in prison. Tucker then interviewed Mike Benz, who talked about how the CIA created and uses Google and Facebook to control and censor Americans. Then Tucker interviewed Assange's wife, Stella, and talked about how the CIA planned the assassination of her husband through Mike Pompeo. Then the CIA-controlled New York Times released a story about the CIA being involved in Ukraine since 2014, while a story came out that there was an assassination attempt made on Tucker Carlson himself while he was in Moscow. The would-be assassin claims to have been recruited by Ukraine, the country the New York Times article said the CIA infiltrated a decade ago. Even more recently, Trump said that if that TikTok is banned, Mark Zuckerberg would be twice as powerful. We all know Zuckerberg is a CIA cutout, and that both Facebook and Google are DARPA creations used by the CIA to monitor and control people. Since the story came out about the CIA being involved in Ukraine dating back to 2014, Victoria Nuland has stated she is retiring. Nuland was the architect of the CIA overthrow of Ukraine that started in 2014. She has likely been in charge of running Ukraine's war against Russia for the past 2 years. Interestingly, I just asked my phone how long Ukraine has been at war with Russia. According to Wikipedia, the war has been going on since 2014. Another strange answer. Trump recently asked why Biden is allowing in so many illegal aliens. He doesn't need them to win the vote, as he can just use election software and blank ballots to steal the election in 2024. So why is he bringing in so many illegal aliens? It's to weaken and destroy America. And there is no other explanation. We are focused on Biden trying to win the election by bringing in illegal aliens who will likely vote for him, but it's even worse than we imagined. He's trying intentionally to destroy America. He and his handlers likely know Trump will be president again, and by bringing in terrorists, they can fight Trump through domestic terrorism while Trump is back in office. I would surmise that a power shift is occurring. Power is being moved from the CIA to NATO, the UN, and the EU, specifically England and France. But why? I believe those in power realize that Trump will be back in office next year. Trump will have authority to minimize the use of the CIA. He did this while in office after Gina Haspel took over as the director of the CIA, replacing Mike Pompeo, who moved to the role of Secretary of State. Trump stopped running intelligence through the CIA under Haspel, or Trump could possibly follow through with JFK's desire to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. How many wars was the CIA able to get America into during Trump's time in office? 0. Which means that while the CIA was working against Trump, he was still able to contain it. By the way, with all this talk about Pompeo recently, he just came out and said that he would like to be a part of Trump's new administration. Coincidence? Why NATO, the United Nations, and the European Union all are outside of Trump's full control. In fact, Trump doesn't want anything to do with NATO, the UN, or the EU. While Europe's economy is suffering, made dependent on outside nations, it is working towards total political control. The Digital Services Act allows Europe to control all media and social media that enters the European continent. Europe is being prepared for a transition into an Orwellian society where the governing members determine what the European citizens see or hear. I would argue that deep state-controlled American politicians hell-bent on sending money to Ukraine is not to assist Ukraine in fighting the war, but to build up NATO, the UN, and the EU. It is a transfer of wealth and power from the CIA to NATO, the UN, and the EU. It is becoming clearer that Trump will be back in the White House in 2025, or at least the deep state believes that to be the case. Trump has spent the last several years figuring out whom he can trust. The moles and potential moles will not be able to sabotage Trump's next administration the way they were able to interfere with the first. No pudgy-faced Alexander Vindman overhearing phone calls from across the room. No more disgusting Olivia Troy lying about Trump treating women badly in the White House. No traitor John Kelly lying about Trump calling veterans suckers and losers. People still believe these lies for real. Someone recently told me there were drugs discovered in the Trump White House. Drugs. The guy doesn't even drink or smoke, but apparently he's doped up on drugs. Unbelievable, and yet some believe it. With Trump back in control and moles removed, it becomes increasingly difficult to control America from within its government and government agencies. It makes complete sense that this would necessitate fighting Trump and the patriots from the outside through the European Union, the UN, and NATO. The Biden years have been about weakening America through illegal immigration while transferring its wealth and power to NATO, the UN, and the EU. Who is behind the mass illegal immigration into the U.S.? The United Nations. I wouldn't be surprised to find out some of the money being sent to Ukraine is being used to fund terrorists to cross the American southern border. Weaken America while strengthening NATO, the UN, and the EU. I believe this is what we are experiencing, what we are living through. The level of fear from the deep state has never been higher. I would expect to see more dismantling of the CIA, more blame thrown at the CIA, a shift to fighting America from the outside. It only makes sense. With Trump back in power, the deep state tools used to control the world over the past century will lose their effectiveness. Trump has already shifted control of America's banking system from the City of London to the U.S. Federal Reserve by switching from LIBOR to SOFR. No longer will the CIA and the U.S. be the cabal's useful idiots in strong-arming countries through covert and military operations. No longer will the CIA be able to control the American and world media. There's a reason the plan to control and destroy America has been occurring from within America since the end of World War II. America is powerful. Americans are a force to reckon with. The plan to fight America from the outside through the buildup of NATO, the UN, and the EU is not by choice. It's from necessity. It's an act of desperation, a desperate plan that will fail miserably. Just what do we expect the cabal to do? Give up? That's my very abbreviated show for today. Go to badlands.substack.com, ericc.substack.com. Check out epicminerals.net. It's my new brand. You heard it here first. See you guys later. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. See you next time, guys.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.